Talk to us first and foremost about a focus on security right now and how you're reacting to it.
Well, security and safety is really the highest priority that the Port Authority has been in the past and particularly today. So we are actively involved with all of the multitude of law enforcement task forces at the city level, at the state level. We have a 2,000-person police department within the Port Authority. We have put them on the highest level of alert. We do that routinely whenever an incident like the Q train killer or anything like that occurs. But we are operating our facilities with safety and security as the highest priority.
We talk a lot here on the show about the return to office, and we know the mayor here in New York has been very persistent about people sort of getting back out, whether it's to work or just out to play. But a big component of that, of course, is public transit overall, and people feeling safe on these trains here. Obviously, the PATH train, which connects, for our viewers, which connects to New Jersey, is under your authority here. What are you seeing with regards to ridership levels, as well as, I guess, the general usage of that in terms of times of day?
Well, the PATH system is operating at 50% of the volume of passengers pre-pandemic, and it has settled in. Really, we haven't seen much movement in those numbers. By contrast, at the bridges and tunnels, the volumes have recovered to pre-pandemic levels, or actually slightly above. I think you'd have to say that there has been somewhat of a modal shift of people preferring to drive in cars as opposed to use public transportation.
How do you bring those riders back? Would you consider offering promotions like the MTA or New Jersey Transit, for example?
Well, we are considering that. What we've tried to do in terms of the ridership is to convey the sense of safety and security. So we have tried to make our police officers as prominent as possible, and we're really trying to think how we do bring those riders back.
Promotions, safety, those boots on the ground, it costs money. How has infrastructure investment been prominent for you? How much has the federal budget been able to be put in the purse of the Port Authority?
The Port Authority is self-sustaining. We do not get significant amounts of taxpayer money either from New York or New Jersey or from the federal government. We have gotten some specific grant funding for particular parts of our operation, but pandemic was particularly brutal in terms of our financial situation. We depend on revenues driven heavily by activity levels. So in the last 24 months, we have seen $3 billion worth of revenue disappear. Our effort here is to maintain a very high level of service. We've tried to become more efficient. We've tried to selectively cut revenues. Most of the impact of the reduction in revenue hits our capital plan, because we take every penny by which our revenue exceeds expenses and invest it in capital.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that, because I mean, when we talk about the connections to New Jersey, New York, and beyond, the idea here is that even prior to the pandemic, there were issues of capacity, whether there was enough capacity in our tunnels and our bridges to accommodate the number of vehicles. There's obviously longer-term concerns that maybe we do need another egress to and from across the Hudson River, whether it's a new tunnel or bridge here. Where does that stand with regards to capital planning right now? And is there more that you need to get either out of the state legislator or the federal legislature?
Well, the built environment is to some extent the built environment. So one of the major efforts we've made over the last few years is to introduce all electronic tolling, so get rid of the toll booths, allow the traffic to move much more easily through the tunnels, across the bridges. And we're trying to put into place strategies to reduce accidents, because that is another huge issue in terms of the fluidity of traffic using our facilities. But the big challenge is that the tunnels are what they are. The bridges have the capacity they have. We've looked at trying to encourage people to look at the times of day that they come in terms of avoiding the peaks, but it's a challenge.
And still thinking about ridership numbers, I mean, do you expect to ever return to pre-pandemic levels, or do you see a future where there's just fewer riders?
Well, that's the question. That to some extent is about what is office work going to evolve to. And right now, everyone is seeing a reluctance of many office workers to come in and commute as frequently as they have in the past. So to some extent, we would see that will probably reduce ridership on a public transit facility like our commuter railroad. But on the other hand, you look at the vibrancy of the residential market. Every place, certainly in the city, you look at the beginning of significant increase and step up in leasing activity. So I think it's way too early to write off the notion that people are going to gradually gain confidence and resume at least some degree of their prior commuting patterns.